Let's face it, life isn't always the party we thought it would be. So how do we find the joy when we need it? And what if it's up to us to create it? That's where the Party On podcast comes in. Our goal? To shine the proverbial disco light on all the things that make our lives easier, healthier, and a heck of a lot more fun. So we can enjoy the party we were all invited to, live our best lives, and dance like absolutely no one's watching. Hey guys, welcome back to the Party On podcast. I am so glad to be back today. I took a week off last week. This is the craziness of Maycember, as we all have started calling it. If you have kids in school, you understand it is just the craziest time of year, going to award ceremonies, and it's all lovely and beautiful, and I wouldn't trade it for the world, but sometimes priorities have to shift for a bit. So I took a week off last week. The kids are out of school now, and I'm just so excited to be back with you guys. And I'm really excited about what we're talking about today because I think everybody experiences it at some point in their life, and that is imposter syndrome. But I want to look at it differently today. I actually had a friend that I have been speaking with, a lovely, lovely friend, and she was going through imposter syndrome this week, and it was so divinely timed because I already knew that's what this podcast was going to be about. And I actually had already kind of mapped out my thoughts on imposter syndrome and what I wanted to say, but through the beauty of seeing her struggle with imposter syndrome, it brought on an entirely different level of thoughts and a deeper level of thinking about it. So I really want to look at imposter syndrome differently today. If you don't know what imposter syndrome is, I think everybody knows what it is, but just in case, it's when you feel like you are not qualified for what you're actually doing. And here's the thing about imposter syndrome, and this is what happened to me this week. And here's why I want to talk about it differently. Most conversations about imposter syndrome sound something like this. Like when someone is responding to someone with imposter syndrome, it's usually a whole lot of encouragement. Like, you're more capable than you think, and you deserve to be here, and believe in yourself, and all those things. And when my friend was going through imposter syndrome this past week, I found myself saying those same things, and I really meant them. Like, I think I wrote her the words, "You are exactly where you need to be. Believe that you're where you're supposed to be in this very moment." And while absolutely true, I started to think about how when we are encouraging people that way with imposter syndrome, it misses something really important. And we should always encourage. We should always, and it doesn't matter. There's nothing wrong to say when you're encouraging someone, and none of that is wrong. But I think it misses the mark on what imposter syndrome really is. So I started to do a deep dive on my thoughts and what is like the deeper level of imposter syndrome. And I wrote in my notes, what if imposter syndrome isn't actually about self-confidence? What if imposter syndrome is something deeper, and it's about our identity? And what if, because I don't know about you, I have felt imposter syndrome many times in my life. We're going to get into it here in a minute. And whenever I felt imposter syndrome, I felt kind of shame about having it, which then it just kind of makes it the whole thing worse. But then I wrote in my notes, what if the feeling of feeling like an imposter isn't a flaw, but a signal about identity, a signal that your life is expanding faster than your identity has caught up to yet. And feeling like an imposter is in fact totally normal. Because think about it, imposter syndrome, when does it show up? It shows up the moment you are stepping into something else and stepping out of where you've been. So something I wrote in my notes is, I think imposter syndrome shows up the moment you outgrow your old story. And I think we've all been there. And what's funny is when we do have imposter syndrome, for me, the defining factor is I feel like I'm the only one. And if it's something like the first day on a new job, or maybe you have a speaking engagement or any of those things, and you're it feels so isolating, like you're the only one who feels that way. And like you have these thoughts like any minute now, someone's going to realize I have no idea what I'm doing. But here is the twist. Everybody else feels the same way. And if you can remember that, it's the first step. And then remembering imposter syndrome is rarely about capability. It's about identity lag. Your life has moved forward, but your self-concept, the way your brain understands you to be, hasn't updated yet. It's like your mind is still running on old software. And I love thinking about it that way, like coding. Like you have these old codes and you haven't quite downloaded the new ones. So when you start to do the new thing, it doesn't feel right to your body, and therefore it sends you a signal. But nothing is actually wrong. You are exactly where you need to be, and you are doing what you need to be doing to step into your new story. A couple years ago, was talking to a friend who was a surgeon, and he was telling me how he'd studied for years, and the first time he had to do a surgery on his own, he just froze. He just froze, and he felt so out of sorts. And it wasn't because he wasn't capable. His brain still saw himself as a medical student. Like he was an actual surgeon at that point, and he just still saw himself as a student. His identity hadn't caught up to his reality yet. And that's how imposter syndrome works. You're standing in a room your past self could only dream of, while your brain is still referencing the version of you from 2 years ago or 5 years ago or 10 years ago. And let's not forget, your brain is trying to protect you. That is its job. And this is another way to think about it. Another way to think about imposter syndrome is your brain is a prediction machine. Its job is to keep you safe. Learning this over the past couple of years has been one of the most important lessons of my life. Understanding the way my brain works so that I don't have to believe every thought. I can actually observe and break it down of why I'm feeling a certain way, why I'm thinking a certain way, before I go down a rabbit hole and let it control my life. So your brain's job is to keep you safe. So when you step into a bigger role that feels completely unfamiliar, or a bigger room, or a bigger stage, your brain goes, wait, stop. This is not comfortable. And then it starts pumping questions through your head. What if we get rejected here? What if we embarrass ourselves? What if we aren't accepted? What if we don't belong? And your brain tries to slow you down by creating doubt. It creates hesitation. And not because you're an imposter, not because you're a fake, but your brain is trying to protect you from social risk. Because again, we need to belong. That is a part of our survival strategy. So, of course, our brain is going to try to talk us back from, don't do it. Don't do the thing that puts you at social risk. And here's something else I thought about. The real danger of imposter syndrome isn't the feeling itself. And this is what I said a second ago about observing your thoughts. So the real danger, and stick with me here, of imposter syndrome isn't the actual feeling of the imposter syndrome. The danger is how we interpret that feeling. So the danger is when we get to the spot where we think, if I feel like an imposter, it must mean I am one. But that's, if you think about it, that's the same thing as saying, if I feel nervous before doing something big, it must mean I'm not ready. And that's completely not true. It's something that I've had to learn in this life is feelings are not proof. They're just signals. And in most cases, imposter syndrome is not actually evidence that you can't. It's evidence that you're growing. Like the actual feeling of imposter syndrome feels so negative. And something that blew my mind this week when I was thinking about it is that it's actually one of the most positive things you can experience if you think about it. Because it means you're doing something new. It means you're doing something brave. It means you're growing. And you don't, think about it, you don't feel like an imposter in places where your identity is already comfortable. It's when you're being asked to step into your higher self, or it's when you're being asked to expand that you feel it. And that is such a beautiful thing. That is such a beautiful place to be able to take those steps. When I first launched the Festive Farm Co., I had major imposter syndrome. I mean, I started my business at quite possibly one of the lowest points in my life, and I was not qualified at all. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew what I wanted. I knew what I wanted to offer this world, and I just started with no roadmap whatsoever, just a whole heck of a lot of passion. And I think my passion just paved the way. And I remember the first time I introduced myself as the founder of my company, and the words felt so strange coming out of my mouth. And the best way to explain it is, as I was saying it, it almost felt like I was lying. Like, that's how weird it felt. And I felt like they were going to think I was lying. And that's some massive imposter syndrome. And by the way, P.S., that was years in. Like, I never introduced myself as the owner of the Festive Farm Co. I would almost make my explanation of what I did smaller, because I felt like I was an imposter at the heart of it all. And my identity was shifting so fast, I just don't think my brain could keep up. But again, the first time I introduced myself as the founder of my company, I remember feeling like I was actually lying. And let me say, to be fair, it didn't help that my entire life people have never really truly taken me seriously. And I'm a go-getter. I do what I set out to do, but I'm really used to people making assumptions when they meet me that I am not capable of the things that I'm capable of. It also didn't hurt that people were always, and they still do, by the way, ask how my, and I'm doing air quotes right now, little business was going. And guys, that's like a topic for a whole different podcast. Every time I'm doing one of these, I'm like, nope, we need to talk about that, because that is an entirely different topic on responding to people's assumptions of you. So we won't go down that rabbit hole here. But I will say, every time someone calls it my little business, I really want to give it to them straight on how this little business has sent over 500,000 gifts all over the world, and how we've spread so much joy and love and hope. But I digress. When I first started, and even sometimes now, I still feel like I'm pretending to be a shop owner, especially when we are expanding. And in the very beginning, I specifically remember people are going to think I'm lying or pretending. But I wasn't pretending. I wasn't pretending. I was doing, and I was becoming. And when I said what I was doing, because my body wasn't used to the fact that that was my new identity, there was a dissonance, and it felt wrong. And that is the essence of imposter syndrome. And think about pretending versus becoming. So I love these two words. So I felt like I was pretending. With imposter syndrome, you tend to feel like you're pretending. But what if you change that word to remembering that you're becoming? Because there's a huge difference between those two things. Like, when a child tries on their parents' shoes or their mom's makeup, they're pretending. But when you step into a bigger version of your life, you're not pretending, you're becoming. You're growing into it. So what if, instead of asking, do I belong here? Do I belong in this space? Should I be doing this? You pause and ask yourself, is my identity catching up to where my life is going? And I just love that question. Is my identity catching up to where my life is going? Because we've established that imposter syndrome often appears right before a new level of life begins, before launching something new, before stepping into leadership. It's the psychological equivalent of growing pains. And growing pains aren't a signal to shrink. They're a signal to expand your self-concept. So how do we do that? And let's just talk about a couple of quick steps. I love me some organizational and motivational steps on how to move through this. So we shouldn't be trying to eliminate imposter syndrome. We don't need to make it go away. We need to be aware when it appears and look at it like a signal. I see you. I see that you've shown up. I see that you're trying to make me shrink. And you are actually a positive thing, not a negative thing. Look at me doing something brave. So how to move through it, we're going to talk about 3 things. First thing, number 1, is what I just said. Normalize the feeling. Feeling like an imposter doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're stepping into unfamiliar territory. That's it. Full stop. So number 1, normalize the feeling. Number 2, and this one gets a little more complicated. This is where I would do some journaling. Number 2 is update your identity. Start telling yourself a new story. Not the story of who you were 5 years ago, but the story of who you are becoming or who you want to be. This past year, I wrote an entire page in my journal of who I want to be as a woman, who I want to become, because that's the first step. Identifying those things helps you understand where you want to go and where you are actually going. And then your brain starts to catch on of, oh, I am becoming this person. I'm actually doing this thing. And it may feel like your identity lags a little bit, but it will catch up. Number 3, and I love this, focus on contribution instead of validation. And we've talked about this in a few episodes. We need to spend less time. Oh, and this is so hard. Like, even as I say it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is every human's struggle. We need to spend less time and put less energy into external validation. So what would it look like if we focused on contribution instead of validation? And what I mean by that is when you focus on whether or not you deserve to be in the room, you shrink. Because that's you're thinking about validation, right? You're thinking about other people's view of you, expectation of you, and then you get scared and you shrink. But when you focus on how you can help the room, you expand. And the fears of the validation tend to shrink. So I know that was a huge step for me in my Festive Farm Co. business, because without even realizing it, that's what I was doing from the beginning. I let my focus on contribution be louder than the fear of validation. I just was so passionate about putting things into the world that helped other people in their grief or helped people communicate what they wanted to their friends and their friends who have become sisters, but they didn't have the words to. I just wanted to help. And when I focused on that, I just kept expanding. And I think that should be the goal, right? Like, to keep growing in this life, to keep expanding. And those 3 ways of moving through imposter syndrome can only help us do that, can only help us continue to push forward on our path. And I want to leave you guys with a story. Years ago, I was invited to speak at an event for the first time. And if you know me, you know this, I am terrified of speaking in public. Sometimes I don't even know how I get on here and do this podcast, but I'm terrified of speaking in public. I shake out of control. And I can't even really believe I agreed to this years ago. And you can actually go back and listen to it. It was a speech I did on the case for leaping. And I made it into one of the podcast episodes because I really loved how that event turned out and the message that I shared. But I was just terrified the night before. This is the best way to explain it. I barely slept. I was so nervous. I think I got maybe like 1 hour of sleep, tops. And my mind kept circling the same thought. What if they realize I don't deserve to be on that stage? What if they think I don't belong there? And I kept imagining someone in the audience raising their hand and asking a question I couldn't answer, and the whole room suddenly realizing that I wasn't as capable as they thought, and why did they come hear me talk? And then I spiraled. And the next day I woke up, I wanted to cancel so badly, but I showed up. And my hands were shaking so much that I couldn't even hold my notes. And I had to move a chair onto the stage. And I had to sit in a way, crisscross applesauce, that was comfortable for me to do this speech, because I knew if I stood there, I would be shaking so badly that everyone would see it. But I took a deep breath and I started talking, and something surprising happened. People leaned in. They were nodding and engaging with me and laughing at the right moments. And some people cried and were wiping tears from their eyes. And in that moment, I realized the very thing that I thought made me an imposter, my fear of belonging in that room, was actually the thing that made me relatable. My uncertainty, my honesty, my humanity, it wasn't disqualifying, it was connecting, because we all feel it. And I honestly think that is what we're all looking for in each other, is that connection. Again, why I started the Festive Farmco. We all want connection, and we don't want to be talked at, we want to be connected to. And years later, imposter syndrome still sneaks into my mind from time to time. But the most important thing I've learned is that I've stopped trying to get rid of it. I appreciate it now. When it shows up, I say, thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for showing me that I'm stepping into something new and that I need to celebrate myself for that. I realized imposter syndrome just means I'm doing something that matters. It matters to me. And it means I'm being freaking brave. And I'm proud of that. I would rather be brave and risk failure than to never try. So if you are feeling imposter syndrome, if you feel that voice sometimes, the one that whispers, who do you think you are? Maybe the answer isn't to silence it. I want you guys to think that maybe the answer is to gently respond to it and say, yes, thank you for showing up. I know who I am. I'm someone who's still becoming. Because the truth is, none of us are fully formed. We can't be. The point of this life is to keep forming and changing and growing. And every meaningful life is built in real time with uncertainty, courage, bravery, and a whole lot of shaky steps along the way. And I know I have had a million shaky steps. So if you're feeling like an imposter right now, it might just mean something positive. It might just mean you're standing at the very edge of the next version of your life. So take the step anyway. Always take the step anyway. Your confidence will catch up later, and so will your identity. Just keep going, and remember that feeling like an imposter means you're doing something incredibly brave. It's something to celebrate. It's something to party on about. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I'm so grateful that you guys continue to show up and listen and give us reviews. It means the world. I hope you guys have a fantastic week. Don't forget to go check out the Festive Farmco. We just introduced a brand new candle that is the Forget Me Not candle that comes with the most beautiful card, inspiring people to light the candle when they are missing their loved ones past. And it might just be one of my favorite things I've ever created. We make all of our candles and ornaments and everything in shop. I just love what I do, and it would mean the world to me if you guys went and checked out thefestivefarmco.com and see what we have in store. I hope you guys, again, have a fantastic week and party on.